You have a child with autism. How was it like for you when he was first diagnosed?
From very, very early on, we realised that there was something different about Declan. Probably shaped by the fact that he's got an older sister, so we'd seen what a normal neurotypical development was like. As he approached the age of 1, we thought he was deaf. We thought he couldn't hear anything because you could stand behind him, you could clap your hands and you could jangle your keys and he just wouldn't react at all. And we began to realise that there was something very wrong. We kind of realised that there was autism. He'd never really shown any interest in any toys at all. And he'd got this little laptop, he'd set it up in the kitchen, and he walked forward and he pressed number 1 and he walked back. And then he walked forward and he pressed number 2 and he walked back. And I just watched him as he went through 3, 4, 5. And when my husband came home, I started talking to Scott about it. And my husband used to work with adults with learning disabilities.
Oh.
And I could see the blood just drain out of his body. And he said, we need to get someone to come and look at Dec.
That must have been really hard.
I remember driving to work the next day and just crying the whole way
bless.
there and realising that our lives had effectively changed overnight. And even then, at that point, you don't realise to what extent your lives are going to change. So this was at the age of 2 when we got the health visitor round, and she was fantastic. She signposted us to Portage straight away, speech and language and occupational therapy. But even though Declan was showing clear signs of autism, they were very reluctant to diagnose him until the age of 3. So it still took us a year and a half to get that formal diagnosis.
And when you, on the day that they said, yes, your son has autism, how did it feel?
It's a very, very strange combination of relief, which I hear from a lot of families, that you're not mad, that you're not imagining all these things, that it's not something that's just in your head, or you're not a bad parent. So first of all, you feel relief, and it's a weird thing to say, you're relieved that your child has got autism. Very, very, very quickly followed by, so what now? What do we do now?
But the thing is, I think with autism, it's a very different type of diagnosis, because by the time the day comes when they tell you, you've probably already known for at least months, if not years, already. So it's a confirmation, probably.
It is a confirmation, and in my role in the NAS, I've met so many different parents who've got children from different parts of the spectrum. And in a way, when your child is non-verbal, like my son, you get the early diagnosis, and so you know very, very early on. But I'm meeting so many parents now who don't get the diagnosis till their children are 7, 8, some as late as 14. And if you've got a girl on the spectrum, then sometimes that's even harder to get the diagnosis, because girls present differently to boys. And when your child is verbal and is in a mainstream school, and is performing okay in school, but just has, they can't socialise, they have anxiety, it's very, very hard for them to then get a diagnosis.
If they do manage to get a diagnosis, what difference does it make?
I think for any parent, as much as you don't want to put a label on your child, no one wants to put a label on your child, it suddenly makes a great deal of sense to you. It means that you can do some research, you can try and meet other parents who are in the same position as you.
Yeah.
Meeting the other parents is so important because it's sharing experiences, it's sharing the resources that you have found that work for you. Just knowing that you're not alone.
Yeah.
When your child is in a mainstream school and your child has got autism, they can often be labelled as the naughty child, the one that is a bit odd and doesn't get invited to birthday parties. It's a very lonely place in that school.
How did you get involved in the local NAS branch?
I always wanted to do some volunteering. When, before Dec was diagnosed, I used to go to a play date run by Sutton Portage. And on my very, very first meeting, I remember going to this, and I wasn't one for going to play groups on my own ever before when I had my daughter, because they could be quite intimidating places. So I'd summoned up all my courage. I'd been told about this special needs playgroup, and I'd summoned up all my courage to go along to this playgroup on my own with Declan. It was the most amazing place with the most amazing people there. And there was a volunteer there who basically took me under her wing. And as I walked around crying, she totally understood it because she'd been there herself.
Right.
And she knew what to say, and she was just there, just listening to me and offering me this advice. And I remember at that point thinking, at some point, if this is where I'm going to be going, if this is where my life is going to be going, I want to do something similar. I want to help other parents. At the time I was going to offer to volunteer, they were looking to get a new branch officer so that the branch didn't fold, didn't disappear. So I ended up volunteering as the branch officer. But I love it. I do love it. I love the people that I meet. It's opened my eyes to a whole different world of autism, because before I was working with the NAS, my world was very much at one end of the spectrum. That's all I knew about. And now I meet parents who have got so many different problems. And it's right, autism is a spectrum. There are no two families that are going through the same issues. You can't compare. There's no comparison as to my life's worse than yours. It's all very different, and everyone has got their own issues.
What's it like living with an autistic child?
I thought it would get easier as he got older. And it hasn't. Every day brings a new challenge. I still cry quite regularly. My son was diagnosed 4 years ago. I still cry quite regularly. The thing that keeps me sane is talking to other parents who are in the same situation as me, who understand what we're going through as a family. It can also be, it can also have the most heartwarming moments as well, because the tiniest little things are the things that you celebrate. If my son says please, or the first time he said please, or if he ever says mum, that's the most massive thing in your life. That and that you carry that with you for a very long time. Imagine. I think a lot of people think that there's a local NAS branch and we don't have we have an office and we're all paid, and your local branches, all of us are volunteers. We're all unpaid volunteers.
So you work from home? We
all work from home. I've got a laptop on a desk in my bedroom. We have committee meetings around a kitchen table. They're all mums. A lot of them work full time and have children with autism, and squeeze in working for the NAS as well. Because we're not professionals, we can't give you advice. We're not allowed to give advice. However, what we can do is signpost you. We try and run information talks. We try and get professionals in that can talk to you about issues such as anxiety, family relationships, diet, sensory issues. Because you won't automatically have access to that type of information and that kind of talk, we like to put those talks on so that parents can come along, listen to the professionals, but most importantly, meet other parents in the same situation. A lot of families with an autistic child become isolated. They stay in because it's easier to stay in and not face people looking and making comments about how their child is behaving in public. So what we've been trying to do of late is to organise trips so that we can get families out, get the children out. And again, it's meeting other families in the same situation and hoping that some friendships blossom as well.
And it's easier then in a group, I suppose, if there is any staring or there are any behaviour issues. I suppose, is it a case that parents don't feel judged as much? Yeah,
I think it's just that there's someone there that you're surrounded by people that know. You know, if my son's making noises and flapping, I don't feel embarrassed because I know that every single parent that's around me gets it.
Has there ever been a therapist or a practitioner who has made a significant difference to your son's life?
There are so many fantastic professionals out there who really, really do care and want to help you.
Yeah.
The issue is you have to go out there and find those professionals yourself.
Yes.
You're not automatically put in front of them. We have worked with one occupational therapist who made such an impact on our lives, made us more aware of sensory difficulties that children with autism have. Prior to us working with her, I didn't really understand what sensory processing issues were. We didn't realise that Dec has hypermobility and lacks ligaments. So when he was trying to walk and then he would just throw himself down on the pavement and cry and wouldn't get up again, and I'd end up picking him up. We never realised, because he can't tell us, we never realised that he was just tired. I can't underestimate how powerful it is to finally understand what your non-verbal child has been trying to tell you.
Have you found that other people that have come in contact with your son can make a difference?
I remember my son was in hospital and a doctor came in and they said to me, "Oh, I saw from your file that your son has had autism. Has he still got that?" Which was, obviously, as autism is a lifelong condition, there is no medicine that you can take that will make him better. That was quite a shock to hear something like that. There's bad experiences you have and there are good experiences, and we had a really, really good experience, and actually it was the last time that we went up to the hospital. When we go to the hospital, it is a very, very difficult time. Declan is very unsettled, can often be crying, screaming. And we were sat outside the consultant's office, and I'm very nervous because obviously he's making a lot of noise and there's people in there having consultations. And a nurse came down and sat next to me, and my immediate thought is she's going to ask me to go and sit somewhere else because Declan's making quite a lot of noise. And she didn't. She looked at me and she said, "I'm very, very new to this role. I've not really come across children with autism before. Can you talk to me about autism? Because I want to be able to help other parents like you." It actually made me feel really cared for. It's probably the first time I actually went home and talked to other people about my experience at the hospital, because someone had shown an interest, someone really, really wanted to know how to help us when we're in that hospital situation and try and understand how to make it easier for us.
If you could ask every NHS member of staff to do one thing differently, what would it be?
I would say, be like that nurse that sat next to me. Don't be afraid to ask us parents for some advice or how it would be best to try and get something or information from our child. Never be afraid to ask us, and we won't think anything less of you, but we would rather you did ask us than just try and use the methods that you use with every other person.